Please welcome Myron Carlson.
Well, you're probably wondering how all that happened. I was at San Jose State and I was going to be a teacher, and I found out what they made. So I saw an ad in the paper. It said part-time agents wanted, Farmers Insurance Group. So I signed up, got my license, and started selling insurance, and by the time I was ready to graduate, I was making so much money I couldn't do anything else. And I was there, I was a reserve agent, I guess, and a full-time agent for about 2 years. And Farmers called me one day and said, we want to make a manager out of you. And I didn't want to be a manager. I wanted to do my own thing. And then I woke up one day and said, gee, you're doing pretty good by yourself. What would you be if you had 100 people doing that with you? And so I decided I would be a DM, and they moved me up to Walnut Creek. And it was about 2 or 3 years later I made my first million. And I have 2 agents I've trained right now, folks, to encourage you. One's named Bob Herzog, the other's named Dave Clayton. Both of them are making well over $1 million in commissions right now with Farmers Insurance Group. And if they can do it, you can do it. You just need to decide how you're going to do it. Anyway, I came here. You see a folder for you. I'm really not pumping the earthquake business. I'm going to tell you something about that. But there's an inside part here that I'd like to have you look at. I'm always thinking like a district manager, and the first thing it should show you is auto and host. It says owners, auto and host liquor liability. The first question I have for you is, what limits of liability do you have for host liquor liability? Do you ever invite guests over to your house, give them a drink, and send them on their way? What's your host liquor liability limits?
0.
0. You don't have it? Do you have a farmer's homeowners or a renter's policy?
There's policy limits, aren't there?
You have host liquor liability in that policy.
Yeah, policy limits.
It's policy limits.
Policy liability limits.
Liability limits. You have it's an automatic part of your homeowners or your renter's policy. And here's why I brought this. There was a man who had invited some people over to his house. They had some drinks. One of the guys left and had a terrible accident. A few months later, the person that served him the drinks was served with a judgment against him for $4 million, having been the person that fed the alcohol to the guy that went out and had the bad accident. Now, does your neighbor know that there's such a thing as host liquor liability? Does your staff know about it? Do the people you meet with know about it? Do you go to some club and have lunch every week or every once a month? Do you ever talk to them about, do you have host liquor liability? Do you ever serve liquor at your house to somebody? Oh yeah, we do. Well, what's your host liquor liability? They don't know. State Farm agents don't know. All state agents don't know. Triple agents don't know. None of those guys know that. They never studied the policy. And you're going to find out something about me. I was a stickler for knowing what you're selling and selling what you have that somebody else doesn't have. In here it's going to tell you that the bureau companies, Hartford, Travelers, companies like that, changed their policy in 2000 and they omitted the host liquor liability coverage. This particular fellow that had the $4 million judgment ended up selling everything he had to pay what he could to get out of what happened. He did have a policy that was disputed in court. It was what we call a bureau company policy, ISO, Insurance Service. And they didn't deny the coverage, but he fought like hell to get some coverage, and it ended up he had to sell 3 properties he had, everything he had to get out of it. Now, most people that you talk to every day don't think about that. They'll tell you, come on over and have a couple drinks and then we'll do whatever, you know. And you walk out of that house, they're your liability. You better have some coverage, and you better tell people about it. The second thing that I want to talk to you when I'm talking to you about liability insurance is there's another issue that I used when I was an agent, and that is, how many of you have broad form DOC on your auto policy?
What is DOC?
Do you know what it is? Do you know what DOC is? All right, let me explain to you. DOC is drive other car coverage. Every policy has drive other car coverage. That means you can drive your neighbor's car and your policy follows you for whatever coverage you have. If he's fully insured, his policy will take over. But now you're a police officer. You work for a fire department. You're an ambulance driver. You're a businessman. That company provides you with a car. Where is your personal liability if this happens? You're a police officer, you get into a wild chase, run a couple stoplights, you're after the guy, there's a hell of an accident, your car is involved, the police officer, he kills somebody with his car. he's going to be sued, and the city he works for is going to be sued. Who's going to provide his defense and payment? Well, it isn't the city, because he's individually sued for his negligence. He isn't insured under that policy, but he's not a named insured on the city's policy. Where does he need coverage? Broad form DOC coverage on his auto policy. It costs you $7 every 6 months. Now, if you're not talking to people about these coverages, that's why you're not selling auto insurance. You've got the best thing going today in auto insurance for people. Now, supposing you're the kind of guy that has one car, but you're constantly borrowing a neighbor's car, and finally says, well, Charlie, use the car anytime you want to. What does he need? DOC coverage? No, it's regularly and frequently furnished for his use. What does he need? Broad form DOC. He can use that car every day of the week if he wants to. Doesn't have to worry about it.
How about rental cars?
Now, well, you're automatically covered under DOC. See, DOC is covered under, that's a car, it's not regularly and frequently furnished, you're renting it. But broad form DOC wouldn't be a bad thing to have on your auto policy when you're doing that. It doesn't add that much. Now, here's another thing I used to do, and it was very effective. I'd say, gee, I see you have a son there that's about 15 years old. Yes. Well, I suppose he'll be going to college here pretty quick in about 3 years. Yeah, be 18, he'll be on his way. Well, I'm just going to tell you a quick story. Suppose he goes to college, he meets some guys, they're having a great time his first week at college, and they all say, let's go get some pizza. They go get some pizza, and they come out of the pizza. Of course, what they have with the pizza?
Beer.
A couple of beers. So he walks out with the guy, and the guy flips out his keys, and he says, hey, you drive us home. Now, your son's been trained, of course, to say, well, I can't drive that car unless it's fully insured. And, of course, he's not going to say a damn thing on the way home. He has an accident. So the first thing that's going to happen to him when he walks off the stage with his diploma as an attorney is going to hand him a judgment against him, against his first paycheck. Now, sir, if you're going to invest all that money in this person, this boy here, his education, I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to make sure that he's always added to one of your policies, and when he is going to be a member of your household, and he has DOC coverage when he's at college. He'll never have an uninsured accident, no matter whose car he's in. You think that's worth the money? You know how much other companies charge for that? They don't give it to you because it's priceless. Just think about that. You're talking to State Farm, you're talking to somebody with teenagers going to college. How much do you have broad form so your son is covered while he's at college all the time? Or your daughter? I don't know. But did your agent ever tell you? No? Well, then it's obvious you don't have it, because it's so important he should have told you about it. And then I used to say this. You folks at where you work, you have the Goof of the Month award? And they'd say, what? And I'd say, you know, some Charlie comes in and drops a wrench in a big machine that runs the whole damn place and the whole plant shuts down. And so 2 weeks later, they put Charlie up on the stage and said, hey folks, Charlie won the Goof of the Month award. He stopped our factory for 2 weeks. We're going to send him to Hawaii. Would that happen?
I don't think so.
No, what would they do to him?
Fire him.
Shoot him.
And you know you can fire your agent now for what he's done to you, and we're going to do it tonight. This is terrible that you don't have this coverage covering your kids at school. Or you don't have this broad form drive other car coverage and you're using a company car frequently, and you would not be named insured on that policy. Know your policy. Know what you can sell, and sell it, because other people don't have it. You've got one of the greatest things going here. Now, here's one more thing. You want policy growth? Start talking to people who rent property. Why do we want to talk to renters? Big premium, a lot of money? No, you can get policy count, but you know what they need? Fire, legal liability. You understand the fire policy? What's in the policy? It has a subrogation clause. What does that mean? The owner of the apartment house says, I'm insured. So there's a big ass fire in this guy's unit, and he caused it because he left a pan on there cooking sausage, walked out, burst into flame, and started a fire. The fire insurance carrier on that building is going to come in and pay for that. There's no question about it. But then they're going to do what? They're going to subrogate against the tenant in that unit. And believe me, they'll follow that guy till he dies getting that money back. You know how many attorneys farmers got sitting around? Well, they're all like that. And they're looking for something to do. And so you just say, look, there's a reason why your tenants should have this policy. One of them is this. The other is, of course, They need to take care of their own personal property. They need to take care of their liability responsibility should it occur. There's lots of reasons to talk to people. Just ask a person renting, how much fire legal liability do you have? Now let's carry it a step further. If you're renting in a commercial building and you have that fire there, guess what's going to happen to you? Do you think the fire company is going to excuse you because of your business? They're going to come in and say, how the hell did this start? Oh, well, we were burning some paper back here. Really? Uh-huh. Well, this is going to burn you for $300,000. That's what we paid for this damage. Where's the coverage, folks? Huh? Fire legal liability under the commercial policy. That's how you open a conversation with a business. Do you have fire legal liability on your policy, sir? He's going to go, fire what? The hell are you talking about? And that's all you want is a chance to talk, right? Get the conversation started. And you go from there. Now I'm going to tell you one more thing that helped me when I started the thing because I found out this. When I'm trying to sell insurance, I've only got so much time to sell it. So I've got to make use of every hour and every day to get in front of somebody to sell a policy. I wanted to make a lot of money. I was poor as hell. And so I developed this. Every time I got in front of somebody, I did this. If I had sold Al an auto policy before I left, I'd say, Al, I have a service I offer here for you. In the event that you were badly injured, you would want somebody to come and help your wife, help your children, help you through this, wouldn't you? Al, who would that be? And he's going to tell me who, his sister, his brother, his uncle, his aunt, the guy across the street. I don't care who it is. I'm going to write it down and I'm going to say, Al, can I have his phone number? He gives it to me. The first thing I do when I get back to my office the next day is I call him and say, this is Myron Carlson. I was just over at Al Caruso's house and we wrote his auto insurance. And we have a service there that he was particularly interested in, and that's emergency referral. And Al nominated you as the person for me to call if something should happen to him so you could come and help his family. And do you accept that nomination? What do you think the person would say? Yes. You see, I learned something when I was selling. I never ask a question I don't know the answer to. And he says, well, sure. And I'd say, well, do you have that kind of service now with whoever you're with, whatever automobile company? And he says, no, I don't. I said, well, how about me coming over and meet with you and just discuss this with you the next time you renew your auto insurance? When is that? You know what I'm talking about. It's called the next date. And I'd put it into my file, and here's what's so good about it, folks. I'd call up and I'd say, Al, let's pretend Al was the guy that said he would be he was nominated. I'd say, Al, this is Myron Carlson. How are you? You know, I called you here because I was over at your brother's house and we wrote his auto insurance. Well, it's time. Do you hear what I said? I said, it's time. And what does he say? What do you mean by time? I said, it's time for you and I to get together. Al, when do you want to do that? Have you ever asked for an appointment easier than that? No. Then you're not doing what I'm telling you about. Making sure it's time and the person knows why you're calling. And you'll have that every time if you never walk out of a house without. Now here's the nice thing. The husband's going to tell you one guy, the wife is going to tell you her sister and maybe her aunt. You walk out of there with 3 leads almost every time. Now here, let me go one step further. You won't believe this, but this is what actually happened to me. The phone would ring and I'd say, this is Myron, Farmers. Oh, this is Helen Jones. Helen, how can I help you? He said, well, you won't believe this, Myron, but I got an emergency. You remember I said this was an emergency referral. I can't find my car. I'm at the shopping center. And I'd say, well, where? Are you standing in front of Macy's or where are you? And they'd tell me and I'd say, I'll be out there, we'll find that damn car. And I'd go out there and we'd find that car. Now listen to this. My phone would ring for weeks after that. From who? From people who knew her and she told them what I did. Now here's one that I did. I got a call from the lady that says, all our kids are sick and my husband's coming in on the airplane and he'll be at the airport at this. And I say, don't worry about it. Give me the gate and when he's going to be there, I'll bring him home. Oh my God. And I jumped in my car and went out there and got him. My phone rang for months after that. People said, you actually went and picked him up and brought him home because her kids were sick and she couldn't get there? What's this all about? Service, isn't it? Yeah. Now do something different. Think about what you could do different for people. That's what I did different. I once had a guy that did this. He put little bags of peanuts together, and he'd go in and lay them down in the office and say, I bet you eat